This is Honor God in the Grind, a Citizen 7 podcast. I'm Drew Kelly.
And I'm Jackson Troxel.
Our careers and day-to-day work can easily lead us to chasing empty definitions of success. This is a challenge that requires Christian men to reframe their life and use our ambition to be an ambassador for God.
We want to redefine what the grind looks like. We sit down with men across the Indianapolis community, and these are men who are rooted in their identity. They're embracing their calling to build, grow, serve, and transform. So we hope this show will be authentic and relatable with each episode as we highlight these stories and show what their testimonies and teachings from the world they're living, how they're embracing God in the grind.
So follow us on citizen7indy.com so you don't miss the upcoming schedule so we can meet you in person as well. Today, we have Ben Lacher, founder of Ben's Garage in Brownsburg, Indiana, and just got the chance to meet him recently and had a wonderful conversation about what his grind looks like. And I thought his testimony would be great to highlight today, as well as some of the teachings that God's had on his heart and the tools to help us all live, our best lives, maximize the gifts God's given us. I think you're a great person who's doing that today, and I'm excited for the conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate this.
Yeah, we get to peek under the hood, so to speak, to use a reference from Ben's world. So, Ben, do you mind just teeing us up with what the grind looks like for you day to day?
Yeah, so basically, I think how I defined grind now, back in the day, 10 years ago, it would have been just work ethic, hard work, get up early, do the thing. I think what I see it as now is more of formation through labor, where when I think of grind, I think of God, being sharpening an axe or a sword, and it's like he has a purpose for me, and part of that isn't going to feel good getting to that point, and being able to let the Lord use my hard work to help form who I am in him and help me become the person that he's purposed me to be, so that I can fill the purpose that he has on my life, would be really how I would define grind now, where it's not work ethic alone, but it is the formation of something that God wants us to become. So
I'm curious just to talk about, when we first met, you mentioned to me that you've always felt a little bit different. Maybe you didn't go to school, you were homeschooled. You felt like it was a calling for you to be a mechanic. You knew you loved to use your hands, and you love to build stuff. I just would enjoy hearing a little more about your background and what led you to some of these learnings through your life.
yeah, so I grew up in a big family. There were 7 kids of us all together. Part of that was we didn't have a ton of money. My dad was an entrepreneur. My mom quit being a RN to be able to homeschool all of us. So when it came time for me to want a dirt bike, it was more like, hey, we'll help you get a lawnmower so you can go make money and then buy your own dirt bike. Well, the dirt bikes I could afford always needed work. So it was kind of something that I was pushed into because of that. So it was called Ben's Mowing Service, which is super original. And
Who's your marketing guy?
Yeah, exactly. So we went Ben's Mowing Service, Ben's Garage, the whole thing. I'm not a narcissist. I don't make everything about myself, or I try not to. But yeah, so I would work on these dirt bikes, and the excitement of having something that was broken and being able to use your hands to fix it was something that became so fulfilling to me, and I just enjoyed. And it was like being able to use my mind in a way where I could see something and see how it works and be able to fix it. I wouldn't have done well if I had to go through the public school system. I couldn't sit very long. I was very crazy, rebellious. Like I would have been kicked out early. So my mom had a lot of grace for me, but really having all of those junk dirt bikes for so long was a great way for me to be able to kind of see that the Lord purposed me for something like this, where it was to work with my hands and do something like that. So as I got older, graduated high school, my goal was to always own my own repair shop. I had an opportunity coming out of high school to go work on a professional race team. So I worked on a top fuel car in the NHRA for a number of years. That's how I ended up down here in Brownsburg, was for the racing scene. And through that, realized that there was a lot of drive that I had that wasn't really from the Lord, that basically at the end of my time in racing, it was more the Lord saying to me, you're going to take your path, which would be continuing in the racing thing, or you're going to take my path, which was getting out of racing
Mm.
and seeing what he had next. So after the racing thing, went into real estate for a little while, was wholesaling houses, started to build up a network and making enough money. I started buying the houses myself and flipping them, stuff like that. But I really wanted to be in the automotive industry because that's where my passion was. So there was an online business that I tried to start, and it was a complete flop. I had just gotten married at the time when we launched it, and went from feeling like I was on top of the world to dead broke in a number of about 5 months. And at that point, I had my CDL from the racing industry. My wife and I were getting pre-foreclosure papers in the mail, and I was like, we're broke. We're about to lose our house. Like, I need to do something different. So I ended up getting a job as a semi truck driver, midnight shift through the next 9 months. During that time, my wife had our first child, and it was one of the hardest seasons of my life because I was alone, driving a truck around the Midwest, delivering parts, working for someone else, all things I never wanted to do. And through that, the Lord really used it to crush a lot of arrogance in me, and
Mm.
really just focus on Him. There wasn't really much to do. You're driving around in the dark in the middle of the night. So I got to spend a lot of time with the Lord. And um, I came across Psalm 13 lately, and this whole concept of David going, God, how long are you going to forget me? How long are you going to keep your face turned away from me? That was what I was feeling through that season, that God had forgotten about me or turned away from me, or I did something to upset him, and he's punishing me by doing this job. And looking back, it was the most special season that I've gone through because it was so um, forming to who I am now. And I remember driving the truck one night, and I was so angry and I was mad at God, and I was just hashing it out with him. And he spoke to me, and it was like, he basically told me, if this all ended tomorrow, would you be okay with your attitude today? If everything for you
Mm.
shifted tomorrow, would you be okay with your attitude today? And that's always stuck with me because it's been something that there are times where I act like a child and I'm having a bad attitude, or I don't think it should be this way. And at the end of the day, it's like the Lord's using this for a purpose in my life. So that whole thing is like, if it all changes tomorrow, would I be okay with my attitude today? And it's a convicting thing for me
Wow.
to think about. Um, so yeah, we went through 9 months driving a truck, 9 more months in a welding shop. At that point, got let go during COVID. My wife and I sat down, and I was like, I don't want to keep doing this where I'm working for other people. I don't think that's what God purposed me to do. So we kind of wrote out all the options. There's a lot that happened between there, but just to keep it concise, we landed on, I think the Lord's encouraging us to step out in faith and start our own repair shop. So May of 2021, we opened up Ben's Garage. We had enough money to buy one lift and drag my tools over there. It was just me at the time, and my wife was helping me out as much as she could, but she was a stay-at-home mom, and that's how it all started. And yeah, it's just kind of taken off from there.
That's
So
awesome, man. I'd love to talk more about kind of how things are going, but just wanted to go back to and when you were in that season of being obedient to God, you said there was a change you had to make, right, in your
yeah,
career, and felt led to not be a part of maybe your original passion, and it led to confusion, right? And you mentioned that you spent a lot of time with God. I just would love to hear if there was anything you would want to unpack there a little bit more in terms of like being obedient, but then being confused shortly after, right? Like in that transformation season,
yeah.
how would you describe that to others?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it was, especially coming out of the racing industry, because there was so much in that fulfilled something inside of me that probably wasn't of the Lord. Like having people see me on the TV and be like, "Oh, I saw you at the race," or "You were on ESPN." My graduation from college was um, broadcasted on ESPN because we had to do it at the race in Bristol because I couldn't be at the actual school for the graduation. So it was stuff like that where it was like this ego thing that I started getting inside of me that was cool. And then going into the real estate deal, like it was just fun. Like there was just this thing where I loved being able to find problems to fix. And there was a lot that the Lord was allowing to happen in my life that um was something that would later formulate who I was. But I think that whole season of driving the truck was truly just to crush me and, have something that was more godly, and the arrogance that I had, the ego that I had, just be crushed. And I think it was the hardest thing at the time, and I hated it, but looking back, it was truly the most loving and merciful, gracious thing the Lord could have done for me, because it was very fruitful, and it has been very fruitful ever since. So I don't know if that answers the question you're
Yeah, it
asking,
does.
but
Yeah. So to hop in here, Ben, thinking about that wilderness season, and you were talking about being formed, the reshaping, the reforming. I guess maybe take us into like where you launched Ben's Garage May of 2021, and how that was all you kind of betting on yourself. There was a certain grind there where you were kind of back against the wall. What did that feel like? But yet you were also probably more connected to God through the previous 18 months that you were talking about, from the welding shop to driving truck. And I guess how did that then lead into now growing a team, building a team, leading others instead of this, racing environment, fast paced. Look at what I can do. Look at how quickly I can do whatever task it might be. There's a lot there that kind of was embedded in you, but then also maybe playing out in a different way.
yeah, and I think at the core of it, the Lord has given me the faith to not be scared to make a mistake. Where it's like, man, we've been in really bad spots before. We've been broke before. My wife, she's just a godsend. She's been a huge encouragement to me. She's always been on board, but she also keeps me in line too when I start to get these ideas that are off the wall or take us off the path that God wants us on. But I think the ability to not look at where we're at or look at what we're trying to do and be scared that we're going to destroy our entire lives has really, it's just been faith, but it's been something that's carried us through all of that. I mean, the Bible says a righteous man falls 7 times and gets back up. And that's always been something that's played in my head. And this is something that I've tried to instill in my children. Like, you're allowed to fail, you're allowed to make mistakes, and you should, because the most successful people that I see in my life make probably more mistakes than anybody else, because they're not guarded by this comfort zone. They're willing to get uncomfortable and take risks. And the risk taking side of me has always been there. But I think being able to partner with Jesus on taking risks and understanding that, if I can see my life as a series of green lights and just hit the gas and go, I'm going to trust that the Holy Spirit's going to turn it red when I need to stop. And that's been a big thing that
That's really cool.
Yeah.
when we're going to go, when we see open doors, we're going to try them. We're going to go for it, and we're going to take risks. We're going to trust the Lord for the finances. We're going to trust the Lord for the mistakes. And if it doesn't kill me, we're just going to redirect and pivot as we go. And we know the Lord's in control of it, and He's purposed us for this. So, yeah, it's been the faith aspect and the faith piece has been something that I've had to grow in a lot. And I had a mentor one time. I was asking him about this struggle of, like, emotionally as an entrepreneur, you feel like it's the best day of your life, and then you feel like it's the worst day of your life. And it's like that happens about every 5 minutes and over the course of a day. So you're just going back and forth with these extremes and these intense emotions. And he was talking to me about Matthew 8 when the disciples are on the boat and Jesus is sleeping. And he was like, how crazy would it be that first storm that you go through? Like, that's what you're going through. You're going through these early storms where you haven't seen, even if you've seen Jesus multiple times get up and calm the storm, it takes time to be able to grow in that and be able to, have the confidence that 100th storm, you've seen this 100 times. You're not going to die. It's going to be fine. He's got you. If you're obedient to what he's asking you, even if it doesn't look the way that it's supposed to, or played out in your head, he's going to take care of it, and he's going to take you through it. And you're going to be better off because of it, rather than just, having a bad attitude and ending up going around that mountain again
Yeah.
until you learn your lesson.
You've mentioned attitude a lot. I think that's really good call out because, the whole idea that like everybody's grind looks different. And how can we think about some of the lies that we've been told in the world that that say, hey, ambition should look like this or success should look like this. But just having a good, like your heart is what's being judged, right? Like, is our heart in the right posture? Is our attitude showing, right, the right body language that represents like Christ's work in our lives? Like, that's big. You've talked about a lot. I think that was really good. And it reminds me of our small group talked about this one time where somebody was talking about Purdue basketball and back when Purdue was winning, a lot more consistently. Matt Painter would be on the sideline with his like, just standing there, arms crossed, like just relaxing. And you look at the scoreboard, they're up by 35 points. So living life with a lead is a thought process that I've thought about is like, am I feeling like because of what God's grace is for me and the victory that he's already had, am I living my life with a lead? Where it's like, I'm relaxed. I can take this pressure about whatever it might be. And that's what you're describing really well is that attitude and that knowing that like you're going to hit the gas till God tells you to stop. You trust the Spirit is guiding you.
Yeah, and I think attitude is a derivative of where your identity's at and where you're looking,
Wow.
where you're spending your time looking. And the 2 Corinthians, we walk by faith and not by sight. My attitude gets really poor when I'm walking by sight. And I can always tell in my heart when I start to freak out and I'm starting to get anxiety about stuff or stress over things that really don't matter at the end of the day. I'm focusing too much on what's right in front of me rather than looking at, okay, who am I connected to? Who's my main here? And if I'm gleaning and feeding off of Jesus in my life and I'm staying connected to him, now I can walk by faith and not feel so overwhelmed by this moment. I'm not looking at the storm. So I feel like for me, I can tell when I'm starting to take my eyes off of what really matters when my attitude starts to get poor or I start to get really short or I get frustrated easily. Um, so yeah, to your point, I think I don't I think that the attitude is a direct reflection of where my heart's at. And it's
Mhm.
when I can find my identity in Jesus, then my attitude is much easier to be good. And when I'm finding my identity in how many Google reviews we have or how much money's in the bank account, or when I'm looking at this car that, you know, maybe we set on fire in the shop, whatever. It's like um I start to lose focus and then my attitude gets really poor. So
I love how you just ran down all the different scoreboards that we can have in our life
Mhm.
that don't define us, but we let define us so much. Yeah. I'm curious just to go one deeper click into the identity piece and just, you know, driving the truck at midnight, right? You talked about listening and actually growing your intimacy with God. I'm just kind of curious how you've continued to lean in. It can be a fast-paced world you're talking about, and time matters a lot. Your team, your mechanics. So also, how do you take time to listen, and what has God revealed to you, perhaps about any of your personal identities of how He has wired you and how that plays out for your day to day?
yeah, so I've realized that for me, morning times are my best time with the Lord. So I do try to get up early and spend time with Him first, because if I don't do it early, the rest of the day I don't find time
How
to
early?
do it. Yeah, so it's
How early?
I wake up at 4:08 is my
4:08.
when my
That's
alarm
very
goes off.
Why
specific.
Yeah.
4:08?
I love that.
I've just always been kinda odd. So, it used to be 4:26 because my favorite engine was the 426 Hemi,
Yep, I was getting ready to say
but
that.
it was like 426 doesn't give me enough time to then spend enough
Spec
time with him before I go to the
What
gym,
motor
so
starts with a 6? I need a motor
6?
that
I mean, it depends on if we're talking cubic inches or liters,
Yeah.
but, yeah, we'll come up with something for
I
you.
like a really big motor though,
It is a big
right?
motor,
Like
yeah,
6 something, that's kinda
yeah,
where I'm at.
that's large.
You're in a smaller motor,
Smaller
408.
yeah, I'm not there yet.
You're good though.
We'll get there.
That's
But
awesome.
but yeah, so spending time with the Lord first is really where I find peace, throughout the day, and being able to yeah, set my heart on him first and foremost. Um, may not work for everyone, and I know there's been seasons where that changes, but getting back into that routine and staying on track with that in this season of life has been huge for me. So,
Awesome.
I was going to ask about now your garage, right? So take us through the growth, right? Something we
yeah.
talk about on this is just the idea that growth is good and you can honor God through growth as well. And then like running a business, being an entrepreneur, you talked a lot about the faith and the actions that led you to here, but talk about how it's been going so far.
Yeah, so we've grown quickly. I mean, it started out as just me, May of 21. Right now, I think we have 12 people that work for us, and we move between 450 and 500 cars a month. So we're one of the largest, if not the largest, independent shop in Brownsburg now. Which honestly was never a goal of mine. I tell my guys all the time, we're trying to take over the world. So
Love it.
growing in Brownsburg was just a piece of that. But um, yeah, I think being able to, the whole faith aspect is like, I can't be overwhelmed and consumed by, do we have the money to do this? And there's legitimate things of stewarding finances and all that we have to be careful to be able to grow. And the Lord allows that. But I can count more times than not where it was like, I don't think we have the money for this, but the Lord's calling us to give over here and he's calling us to buy this equipment. And I don't know how this is going to play out, but the Lord always carries us through. So being able to grow just as a shop has been awesome. But I think the coolest part of it was just growing as a leader. I think that is one of the big things for me that I've learned where if you saw me in the first 2 years, I was hiring and firing people constantly. People would be like, "Oh, it's so hard to find good techs." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's impossible." Even though I fired like 30 people in the first 2 years of working. And a lot of that was my own fault, was because I wasn't a good leader and I would look at how can I use people to grow my business rather than using my business to grow my people. So having that mindset shift, and I'm still not there, I still haven't arrived. Still make lots of mistakes, but I think having that mindset shift of this business is going to grow as fast as I'm growing personally with my walk with the Lord as a leader, and being able to serve my guys and give them the tools to be able to do what I ask them to do. Um, so really the the shop growth has been cool, but I do think that the biggest piece of it is how the Lord has grown me and walked me through some of this stuff to be able to grow as a believer, as a husband, as a father, and and as a leader in the shop and an entrepreneur.
That's humbling too. Yeah.
Yeah, Ben, a lot of people do overlook the trades, in terms of their calling and how when you stepped into leading and starting Ben's Garage and now feeding into your people, when did that kind of become a calling versus maybe even an assignment, so to speak? And how you then like had that transfer to your team instead of it just being a job, but trying to meet them where they are. And maybe for a lot of them, it's just a job, but how do you kind of transform how you're leaning into that for them?
Yeah, and I think the big key is we could grow this business and be, a 9, 10 figure business someday. But if we never lead one person to the Lord, then what did we really do? If we never really had any kingdom impact, then what was all this all about anyway? So I think having that mindset of like, whatever we have, we're going to learn to work with a little, we're going to learn to work with a lot, but we're going to have impact no matter what, no matter how much is there, no matter who's working for us. We want to walk and operate in a way where I can stand before the Lord at the end of it. Because one of my biggest fears is getting to the end of my life and hearing, you wicked and lazy servant. And
Mm.
I had buried my talents or the gifts that God had given me or the shop that God had given me ends up getting buried and not used for anything eternal or impactful. So I think just that, where it's like, it doesn't matter how big we get. It's how much eternal impact are we
So
truly
good.
having where we're at and using what we have to do that. So we're still figuring that out. And, we've seen people come to the Lord through our shop, and we've been able to utilize the finances to give cars or help people with repairs, and I really do think the Lord is redeeming it, because no one likes the automotive industry. No one wants to come bring their car to us and get it fixed. It's like going to the dentist. Like, people dread it.
Yeah.
And the more expensive it gets to fix your cars because of the technology and the complicated process of fixing them anymore, is like, people don't enjoy coming to see us. But, if we can make it, impactful in any way eternally, then it's a win.
My grandpa started a automotive repair and lawn and garden center in 1958 in Valparaiso, Indiana. And
Yeah.
then my uncles continue that. My mom's been in the business 40 plus years, but you do have a lot of opportunities, with folks. You mentioned 30 people in the first couple of years and how it was kind of a flywheel of talent. It's tough because so many of these folks are coming from places where there are uncontrollable elements in their life
Yeah.
when they're showing up to work. And you're trying to create stability in that environment, in a place that they can then take that to their families and everything else. And I just think it is a mission field. So hearing you think about kingdom impact and doing things that aren't only about growth or the bottom line or the top line is inspiring to me, and I think God's going to see that through. I think one question I have on that is, with so much opportunity right in front of you, said 12 guys in your shop today, one of the largest independent shop in Brownsburg. You went through this program called Praxis. You went through the local cohort to really understand the redemptive frame. I'm curious if there have been things you've pulled from that, if that was a resource that helped you think about the space you're operating day in, day out, in a way that just made you already deep in that conviction there, but give you a new way to see the work you're doing day in, day out.
Yeah, I think at the very least, being in a group like Praxis really opens your eyes to, you're not alone. Like, there's a lot of people with a lot of the same struggles. A lot of times in our situations, we look at our life and, like, man, why does this stuff just happen to me? Why are all these things not falling into place? Why do I look on Instagram or Facebook and see these people who've had success and done well? And it's like, now we're all going through the same stuff. It's all the same things. There's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
So it's like, at the end of the day, being around people who are entrepreneurs that are working on their own businesses, and you start hearing the struggles that they're in, and it's humbling. A lot of times you're like, man, I thought I had it bad, and this person's in that situation. Like, it really gives you a new perspective of how the Lord is working. But it was a great process, and I think the people and the connections that I've made through that, and just the excitement of God is doing a work in Indianapolis far beyond what I could have imagined.
Go.
And when I start getting around these people of different backgrounds, the diversity of where they came from, or the industries that they're in, because I've just kind of been consumed by the automotive industry for the last 5, 6, 7 years. But seeing, you know, the coffee shops and the marketing agencies and these other industries that I don't think as much about, and hearing how they're being redemptive, it really encourages me that there is more to this. How do we partner and come together and start working in different ways? Like, what is truly the kingdom impact we can have if we're in communities like that and we're working together for a greater purpose?
It's awesome. Love
That's,
it.
so, tell us about your church. Tell us about your board of directors, if you will. Some of your friends or people that you really rely on as you, whether it's with the garage or just your daily life. Would love to hear more about that community.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a group of guys in the automotive realm specifically that I have as mentors, as kind of just overseeing and accountability at its core. But then from a spiritual aspect, there's a group of guys that I've gotten involved with that are much farther down the road with me. Most of them are quite a bit older than me, but um, seeing them operate as entrepreneurs with businesses that I would see as very successful, um, the way that they father and parent their kids, the husbands that they are, that to me is like full circle how where I want to be and how I want to grow, because we could do whatever in business, but it's like, if I failed at parenting, if I failed at being a husband, like, I failed
Mhm.
big time. So the shop could disappear tomorrow. Who knows? And that would just be part of the entrepreneurial journey. But if I lose my family over work, or if I lose my marriage over work, like that was a huge fail in the kingdom. So, um, yeah, being around guys who've nailed that part of it and run successful businesses has been huge for me. And being able to talk to them about struggles that I'm going through, and they're like, here's a story about my life. Here's an area that was similar that the Lord took me through. So, yeah, a lot of that, those small groups, and at the end of the day, we were created for relationship. We were created for community. So who would have guessed God knew what he was doing when he created those types of things to be able to grow us and help us. But yeah, there's friends, lifelong friends that I have like a pretty core group of people I'm really close to. And then outside of that, like I I try to focus on that, and my family, and the family piece has been something big that the Lord's been working on me in, is not not seeing it as I have my job over here, my occupation over here, and then my family over here. It's like, how do we blend those things together? I don't believe in work-life balance. I think that there's an integration that the Lord
Yeah.
wants to have, where it's like you can do both of these things and do both of them really well. I wish I had the magic bullet to what that looks like,
Yeah.
but the Lord's working on me in that. But yeah,
You are you, no
yeah,
matter where you are.
yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I think just to summarize on, a lot of people in Citizen 7 maybe just like have done a lot of great things in the city already. And there's also now kind of like a group growing up in Citizen 7 where they're, like you and I met at the 35 and under thing.
hmm
How would you describe how to get started for some of these folks, or how to make the most of whether this community, or just, stepping into their assignment, right? As they think about their grinds, getting from early stage career to potentially being a leader in the city. How would you kind of describe that and encourage us?
I think the biggest thing is, one, being connected to Jesus at a deep level, but also being connected to people who love Jesus as well. And, participation is huge. Coming to those events, even as inconvenient as it can be at sometimes, being a part of that. Vulnerability is huge, especially in men. We hate talking about our feelings. We hate talking about our struggles, but I feel like that's the key to growth in our lives as men, is being able to let down our guard and share. And those communities, that 35 and under group is such an incredible group of young men, that there's so much potential and purpose there that the Lord wants to use. And it's like just participating in those, even if you're not feeling it that day, or you're not feeling whatever, it's like being there will start to open you up and start to get you comfortable being around these other guys and sharing your heart. But I also think not being afraid to make mistakes. And if the Lord's calling you to do something, your job is to be obedient and let Him take care of the rest. So if there's an entrepreneur or somebody even working for somebody else, it's like, man, I really feel like this is what I'm supposed to do, but I don't really have all of the pieces in order. Well, I'm telling you, if you have all the pieces in order, you've already missed your opportunity. So it's like people look at, like, the way I define luck is like preparation meeting opportunity, and that intersection of those two things. And the rest of the world sees it and they're like, oh, you just got lucky. And it's like, no, the Lord's been preparing me for this moment, and this door opened. And because I was prepared, I was able to be obedient and walk in. And what preparation looks like is different for everybody. But at the end of the day, it's like, obedience is the key to fulfilling your purpose. And that may be, I can only see this far. But if the Lord's asking you to walk that far, then walk that far, and then He'll open doors to show you the rest of it. So
I love your boldness. I love how you represent that faith. I'm going to ask a question and let you have the last one, and then give Ben the final
Cool.
word too. But, just thinking about, you spoke about your wife, Katie. You talked about your partnership together. You talked about this idea really of big faith together, being on that journey. I just would love to hear a little bit more about that partnership with your young kids at home. We were at a conference together last fall that was oriented about couples giving together in a meaningful way. So there's a few different layers to this, but I was also really impressed at that conference with your wife's faith
yeah,
in a way that was just like unfiltered and really impressive in a way that she was believing alongside you and believing in you in a way that was like so cool. So if you don't mind just sharing a little bit about that too.
Yeah. If if you meet my wife and you meet me, you'll realize we are opposites personality wise. And for all the Enneagram people, literally it says these two people will never make it. So seeing the Lord's hand in that, and just the way that it complements each other. She's very shepherdly, caring, loving, gracious, and I'm more of the tyrant and controlling and, kind of hard-headed, very
So what are the
hard-headed.
Enneagram numbers that don't work out?
So I'm an 8 and she's a 9. So it's
Okay.
like I'm very driven, the challenger. She's more people pleasing and caring for people. I tend to see people more as tools. She tends to see people more as people. And so a lot of that, the way that it's worked out is she keeps me in line. When I'm like, yeah, we need to make this decision. And she's like, well, how is that going to affect those people on the other side of it? And I'm like, well, I don't really care. This is what we need to do to get ahead.
Yeah.
And so there's been this beautiful partnership in the way that the Lord speaks through her. And I do think he's gifted us both in faith, which has been very helpful because there's a
I
lot
see
of
that.
things where it's people look from the outside and they're like, you guys are crazy. And we're like, yeah, we know, but we're just crazy enough to try. So having her as my partner and as my helper, I just feel like is so great. And it's obviously only of the Lord because it wouldn't have worked any other way. But yeah, she's been a huge part of this whole thing, and she doesn't get enough credit. I think because I stuck my name in the name of the business, that it's like everyone thinks it's just me, but it's she has a much harder job than I do, staying at home with the kids
Yeah.
and 20 minutes alone with the kids makes me remember that, where it's like, I don't know how she does this all day, because it's hard. But yeah, she's been a huge, huge encouragement, huge part of that.
Love that.
I'm a 8, 9
Okay.
Enneagram, so you can imagine the torture in my head
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
It's really hard, but I love that balance and that integration between you and your wife and your family and your job all at the same time. And I also wanted to say that been this push in Indianapolis. I don't know if you guys have heard it, called Speed City. Like there's
Uh-huh.
other cities that have their own identity.
Yeah, Christian Anderson's planting a flag on Speed City.
I think, Ben, you're an awesome representation of what Speed City can look like in a faithful way,
Yes.
not just in a velocity way from an entrepreneur standpoint or race car. Obviously, you have that, but you're just running the race that God's given you, and just really admire that.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that.
So I think we're probably going to wrap up soon. Is there anything else before we go? We can end in prayer. I can pray for, or unless you want
Yeah,
to.
any
Jack.
final words, Ben, that you'd leave us with, or something that has kind of been on your heart that you still haven't shared out?
No, I appreciate you guys letting me be here. I think there's a million things I could talk about and 1,000 stories. But I think at the end of all of it, like, I want God to get all the glory. I'm not special. I'm not super gifted. I'm not super talented, but I think that, when we can partner with the Lord on his purpose for our lives, it plays out really cool and it's a lot of fun. And as hard as it can be, he's the one who gets all the credit and the glory. I'm just a vessel with what he's given me. So yeah.
Absolutely.
It's awesome. What a beautiful summary of what Citizen Seven's all about too.
That's right.
Working hard, partnering with God, being in community with each other, and you said having fun along the way.
Yeah, for
Come on,
sure.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
That's
Yeah, close us out, Drew.
All right. God, thank you for Ben and for this conversation. We just feel your presence right now, God, knowing that we all have our own day-to-day life. We all have our own versions of what our grind looks like, God, but you redeem that every day. God, we just ask for a heart that is tender and loving towards you and towards others in our life. God, we pray for an attitude that is refreshing to others around us. God, we just ask for continued faith that leads to just fearlessness in our lives, in our jobs, and at home. God, we just know that your hand is all over Ben and this group. Thank you for Jackson. Thank you for Citizen 7, God. Continue to pray for leading a fearless city of Indianapolis. Thank you for these men. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Drew. Good
Appreciate it.
stuff.